The chamber is dark, and the air itself feels heavy with the weight of incense and the echo of 1,000 prayers whispered by trembling lips. You are not alone. A procession of the damned moves beside you, each step a slow march towards something that is not death, not life, but an obliteration that is both holy and horrifying. Ahead, the light of the Astronomicon burns unseen, yet all-consuming. And you know that what awaits is not salvation, but service, eternal, wordless, and unending. The walls hum with the distant vibration of colossal machines, each thrum a reminder that the Golden Throne hungers, and it is through you that its hunger will be stilled for another day. You have been chosen, not because of greatness, but because you were born into a galaxy that demands sacrifice. You are to be fuel, and the Emperor is the fire. If you find yourself drawn into this vision of the Imperium's most secret, most terrible truth, then linger with us. Let this story carry you to the edge of the throne itself. And as you descend deeper into the silence of Terra, give this tale the same offering you would give the Master of Mankind, your devotion. Like, share, and subscribe, not as a mere action, but as a ritual, a way to keep the Astronomicon burning for those who seek the light of this channel. Every voice added keeps the beacon alive. The notice never comes with warning. One day you are among the countless billions who walk Terra's streets, and the next your name is carved into a ledger by a scribe who will never meet your eyes. There is no announcement, no trumpet, no recognition of service or sin. Only a quiet mark on a data slate, an entry and a record that seals your fate. To be chosen for the Golden Throne is not a reward. It is an erasure. It is the moment the Imperium decides you will no longer be a person, but a vessel, a necessary offering to the Master of Mankind. And when the Officio Medicae agents come, cloaked in robes marked with the Imperial Aquila, you are taken without words, herded into transports with others whose faces mirror your confusion, your disbelief, your dawning terror. The city above pays little notice. To them, disappearances are as common as the toll of the bells from the Ministerium's temples. People vanish every day in the Imperium, claimed by war, famine, or the slow grind of labor in manufactura. But those seized for sacrifice walk through a different door, one that leads not to death in battle or disease, but into the vaults beneath the Imperial Palace, where the light of the Astronomicon is fed by their ending. You do not know this at first. All you feel is the pressure of the crowd against you as you are driven forward, the stink of sweat, the weight of silence. None speak, because what words could be uttered when every syllable dies in your throat? You do not even know if the stranger beside you is from your hive, your district, or your world. Perhaps they were taken from a mining colony on the other side of Terra. It does not matter. You are all the same now, chosen fuel. The first hours pass in confusion. The transports descend into the shadows of the palace, and you catch glimpses of walls that rise like cliffs of stone and metal, carved with runes older than any living man. You smell incense burning somewhere distant, mingling with the acrid tang of promethium that seeps from machinery embedded into the architecture itself. Vox grills crackle with static chants, snippets of prayers that never quite form words. The deeper you go, the more it feels as though the palace is swallowing you whole. And with each passing corridor, you feel less like you are being led, and more like you are being digested. It is only when you reach the first holding chamber that the reality begins to sink in. The chamber is vast, lined with alcoves where robed attendants wait with data slates, checking the names and numbers of those who arrive. You are no longer called by name, only by sequence. To them, you are designation, nothing more. Your identity, your history, your fleeting dreams, all stripped away in a whisper of parchment and a stroke of stylus. The attendants do not meet your gaze. Their eyes are fixed on their work, their lips moving in prayers you cannot hear. And behind them, towering in golden armor, stand the custodian guard. They do not speak either, but their presence is suffocating. Each movement of their massive figures reminds you that you are nothing before them, less than dust beneath their shadow. The custodians are not here to comfort, nor to guide. They are here to ensure there is no defiance. To look at them is to see perfection wrought in flesh and warplate, a glimpse of the Emperor's will made manifest. To look away is to admit what you already know. There is no escape.
Some try to speak. A man cries out, demanding to know why he was chosen, insisting that he has family, that his service in the Ostro Militarum should grant him reprieve. The words are still echoing when a custodian's spear butt crashes against the stone floor, and the chamber falls into silence so deep it crushes every thought. The man trembles, his voice caught in his throat, and then he too lowers his gaze. None defy the Emperor's will. None resist the throne. The knowledge spreads through you like ice. You are already dead, and the only choice left is how you walk toward it. In the hours that follow, the crowd is separated into lines, each one processed with ritual precision. The air is thick with incense, choking, making your lungs burn, yet you know this is not for you. It is for the sanctity of the place, for the rituals the priests chant as they record each soul that passes. Your ears ring with their voices, half machine, half human, a droning hum that seems to burrow into the marrow of your bones. You hear the words, "For the Emperor," repeated again and again, and you realize that your life has been reduced to a single offering in a sea of countless others. You are not unique. You are not remembered. You are sustenance. It is in this moment, as the line inches forward, that the weight of despair strikes fully. You think of the world above, of the sunlight you will never see again, of the voices of those you once loved fading into silence. You wonder if they will even notice your absence, or if your name will simply become one more among the uncountable missing. And then you realize the truth. It does not matter. The Imperium is too vast, too blind, too hungry to care. You were never meant to endure, you are meant to serve, and your service ends here, in the shadow of the Golden Throne. The chamber empties in waves, each group led through a towering gate of adamantine that grinds open with the sound of grinding gears older than empires. You are ushered through when your turn comes, the press of bodies moving not by choice, but by the rhythm of custodian command. The moment you pass beneath the arch, the world changes again. The air is colder here, sharper, as though the very stone breathes differently. The corridor beyond is narrow compared to the vast hall you left, but its walls are alive with light. Streams of data run like rivers across the surface, flowing in patterns you cannot understand, whispers of machine code etched into the bones of Terra itself. To your ears they sound like voices murmuring in a forgotten tongue, and though you know they are not meant for you, they coil in your thoughts like a second heartbeat. You march onward, surrounded by silence that grows heavier with each step. Only the sound of boots on stone echoes here, though even that feels swallowed by the weight of the place. The further you walk, the more the corridor begins to feel endless, as though it stretches beyond time itself. Some around you falter, their legs trembling beneath them. They are prodded forward by attendants, their protests drowned beneath the droning hum of hidden machinery. There is no pause, no mercy. The procession is constant, relentless, an artery feeding into the throne. It is here that the first signs of despair truly manifest. You watch a woman ahead collapse to her knees, her shoulders shaking with sobs that break the silence like glass. No one comforts her. The custodians do not move, nor do the attendants. She is lifted by servitors, her limbs clutched by metal arms that hold her as though she were nothing more than cargo. Her cries do not slow the march, they are absorbed into it, dissolved like water into sand. And you realize then that the system is not built for individuals. It is built for flow, for movement, for efficiency. Your humanity is an afterthought. The machine of sacrifice does not stop for sorrow.
The corridor opens at last into another chamber, smaller but more suffocating. Here the walls are covered in icons of the imperial Aquila, carved with precision so fine the feathers seem to shiver in the light. Candles burn in niches by the thousands, their smoke curling into the air like fragile tendrils that cling to your skin. The smell of melted wax and incense is overwhelming, thick enough to sting your eyes. At the center of the chamber stands a dais, and upon it a priest of the Ministorum, his voice booming through a vox grill that distorts every word into something both human and metallic. He chants the litany of devotion, each phrase punctuated by the clang of a censer as acolytes swing it back and forth. The words wash over you, and though you cannot recall their exact meaning, the rhythm beats into you like a drum. It is not about understanding, it is about submission. You are halted here, lined in rows that stretch into the darkness. The priest speaks of honor, of glory, of becoming one with the emperor. He speaks of duty fulfilled, of how your sacrifice ensures the light of humanity stretches across the void. Yet as you listen, the words feel hollow. They are not meant to comfort you, not truly. They are meant to strip you of resistance, to lull you into acceptance. You glance at those beside you and see their faces, some glazed with resignation, some still twisted with fear, others emptied entirely, their eyes like glass. The variety of human response is irrelevant. All end in the same silence. When the chanting ends, attendants move among you. They mark your foreheads with oils that sting your skin, symbols traced in spirals and crosses. The scent is bitter, almost metallic, and it lingers even after their touch has passed. A man beside you whispers a prayer under his breath, his words trembling as he calls the emperor's name. You do not know if it is faith or desperation. Perhaps they are the same thing here. The attendants then place chains across your wrists, not tight enough to cut, but heavy enough to remind you that you are bound. When you lift your arms, you feel their weight like judgment itself. Another gate opens, and the march resumes. Each chain clinks with the rhythm of a dirge, a sound that echoes in your skull long after it fades into the chamber behind. The corridor now slopes downward, deeper into the mountain of stone that is the palace. The air grows warmer again, oppressive, carrying with it the faint hiss of promethium burners and the low growl of machines that never rest. You feel as though you are descending not only through the palace, but into the veins of Terra itself. You wonder how deep it goes, how many layers of labyrinth stretch beneath the surface. You wonder how many have walked this path before you, and how many will follow after. The thought is dizzying. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. You are only today's offering. For the first time, you begin to understand the scale of what you are part of. The Emperor does not require hundreds or thousands, but tens of thousands every day. You are one among an endless tide, a single flicker in a blaze that has burned for 10,000 years. Your individuality dissolves in that realization, and it terrifies you more than death itself. To be forgotten is one thing. To never have existed at all, swallowed into the machinery of the throne, is another. And yet that is your destiny, carved into the stone of the Imperium long before you were born. You are not chosen for who you are, but because the galaxy demands it. The Astronomicon must burn, and you must burn with it. The descent continues, and with each level you pass, the light grows dimmer. The torches and lumen strips that line the walls flicker with a strange rhythm, as though they are alive, pulsing in time with the thrum of ancient generators buried deep beneath the palace. The air is thick, carrying a taste of rust and ozone that clings to the back of your throat. You cough, but the sound is lost amid the steady shuffle of countless feet moving in unison. There is no individuality here,
no voice louder than the mass. You are a current in a river, and the river flows downward, always downward. Somewhere above, Terra's skies are hidden by the smog of its hives, its oceans of humanity, its endless manufactura. Down here, there is no sky at all, no sense of direction beyond forward and down. The walls are carved with symbols too old for you to recognize, their edges worn by centuries of touch from pilgrims long since erased. You wonder who they were, if their fear was like yours, if they too left families behind who never knew the truth of where they went. That thought burns in you, because you begin to realize that your story will be the same. You will vanish without trace, swallowed not only by the palace, but by silence itself. Even your memory will dissolve. At intervals, the procession halts. Attendants in robes of crimson or sable step forward, their hands bearing relics that gleam in the half-light. They inspect the chosen, not with compassion, but with methodical calculation. They check pulses, open mouths to peer at teeth, press devices against temples that emit soft clicks and mechanical whirs. Those deemed unfit are dragged aside. You never see where they are taken. One moment they are beside you, trembling, breathing, whispering prayers. The next, they vanish behind a door that hisses shut, never to return. No one asks questions, no one dares, but the silence after their removal is heavier than any chain. The custodians remain at the edges of the procession, still as statues, golden giants whose eyes seem to pierce through every thought. Their weapons are at rest, but you know that rest is only an illusion. Their presence alone is enough to bind you more tightly than the chains at your wrists. You find yourself avoiding their gaze, as though to meet their eyes would burn away the last fragments of who you are. And yet, a part of you longs to look, to see if even a flicker of humanity lingers in them. You never do. They are beyond you, beyond all measure. They are the Emperor's guardians, and through them you are reminded that what you walk toward is not a crime or an execution. It is holy, it is necessary, it is inevitable. The further you go, the more your mind begins to fracture under the weight of inevitability. Some around you fall into silence, their eyes glazed, their lips moving soundlessly in private prayers. Others shiver uncontrollably, their bodies betraying their terror even as their faces lock into masks of resignation. You feel both currents pulling at you, the urge to resist, to fight, to scream, and the deeper urge to simply surrender, to collapse into whatever fate awaits. Each step forward is a war between those impulses, and each step forward is one step closer to their end. You reach a vast hall, its ceiling so high it vanishes into shadow. The air here is colder again, a breath of ice that bites at your skin. Along the walls, statues rise, colossal figures carved in the likeness of the Emperor himself. Their faces are serene yet stern, their eyes cast downward as though judging you with every step. Beneath them, braziers burn with oils that release choking smoke, so thick it coils like serpents around your ankles. You cannot see the floor clearly, but you feel it vibrate, pulsing with the machinery beneath. It is as though the very palace is alive, and you are walking through its heart. A chant begins, low at first, then building. It comes from the priests who stand along the edges of the hall, their voices weaving together in harmony with the grind of hidden engines. The words are not meant to be understood. They are meant to envelop, to saturate, to leave no space in your mind for thought. You feel it pressing in on you, drowning you. The hall is a crucible, a place where resistance is burned away by sound and smoke until only submission remains. And as the procession continues, you realize that is the point, to strip you down, to hollow you out, so that by the time you reach the chamber of sacrifice, you are already emptied, already nothing more than a vessel waiting to be consumed. It is in this moment that the enormity of what lies ahead finally claws at you.
You understand now that you are not simply dying, you are not simply vanishing. You are being remade into something else, something that does not have words, something that cannot be comprehended by mortal thought. The Emperor will take you, not in body, but in essence, and whatever remains will not be yours to claim. You wonder, fleetingly, if any part of you will endure, if a fragment of your voice will echo in the Astronomicon's endless light. Or will you be obliterated so utterly that even the memory of your existence is gone? The thought lingers as the chanting grows louder, until you feel it vibrating in your bones, until you feel as though the sound itself might shatter you before the sacrifice ever begins. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the chanting stops. The silence that follows is suffocating. Every heartbeat, every breath feels amplified, deafening in its isolation. You stand frozen, chains heavy, lungs burning with smoke, eyes stinging from incense. In that silence, the truth is clearer than ever. There is no turning back. You have been chosen, and the throne is waiting. The silence endures long enough to hollow you out, to make you feel that perhaps you have ceased to exist. Then, with the groan of metal grinding against metal, new gates open ahead. The sound reverberates through the hall like the tolling of a vast bell calling you forward. Custodians step aside to form a path, their armor glimmering in the half-light, their eyes hidden behind helm visors that might as well be the gaze of the Emperor himself. The chains rattle as the crowd lurches into motion, and you are carried along with them, your feet barely your own. The passage narrows again, and the air grows dense with heat. The stone walls sweat with condensation, and you taste salt on your lips as though the palace itself bleeds into you. You enter a chamber smaller than the others, yet it feels infinitely more oppressive. The walls are lined with reliquaries, each holding fragments of bone, scraps of parchment, shards of ancient armor, relics of those long since given to the throne. Priests move among the reliquaries, their robes stitched with sigils of flame and star, their voices whispering litanies that sound more like dirges. They do not look at you. They do not see you. To them, you are already gone, already ash and memory. Their focus is on the reliquaries, on the eternal reminder that countless others have walked this path and vanished, their remnants sanctified for the faith of the Imperium. It is here that your procession halts once more. The priests step forward with censers, swinging them in arcs that release gouts of smoke so thick it becomes a fog. You cough, your eyes watering, but the chains prevent you from raising your hands to your face. The smoke clings to your lungs, sweet and bitter at once, a taste that coats your tongue like oil. Your head spins, and you realize that this too is part of the ritual. The smoke dulls thought, softens resistance, blurs the line between waking and dream. Around you some collapse to their knees, their bodies swaying as though caught in a tide. Others stand rigid, faces slack, eyes glazed. You feel yourself drifting between them, a creature caught halfway between flesh and shadow. The priest's chanting rises, a harmony with the hidden engines beneath the palace, and the reliquaries seem to glow in the smoke. You see the outlines of skulls, the shimmer of ancient seals, the faint burn of parchment as if the words themselves are alive. The sight sears into you, and you wonder if this is what remains of the sacrificed, if the Emperor allows fragments of them to endure only as reminders to those who still live. If that is true, then perhaps you will join them soon. Your bones locked in glass, your essence lost to the Astronomicon, your name forgotten. The thought chills you, even as the chamber burns with heat.
At last, the chanting fades. The priests raise their hands, and the smoke begins to thin, pulled upward through hidden vents. One by one, your group is herded toward narrow archways at the far side of the chamber. Each arch glows faintly with runes, their light cold and sterile. Custodians wait by the arches, their spears held upright, their golden armor gleaming with an almost divine sheen. You feel their gaze even without seeing their eyes, and it pierces deeper than any blade. For the first time you realize that they are not simply guardians. They are witnesses. They stand here to see you reduced to nothing, to ensure that no soul resists, that every sacrifice is carried through to the end. You cross the threshold of one of the arches, and a chill runs through you despite the heat. The corridor beyond is narrower still, its walls smooth and seamless, as if carved by hands that never belonged to mortals. The sound of your chains echoes sharply, each step ringing like a toll. The corridor slopes downward, steeper than before, and the air here hums with power. You feel it vibrating through your skin, buzzing in your teeth, a resonance that seems to align your heartbeat with the pulse of the palace itself. You understand now, in a way that words cannot capture, that you are nearing the heart of it all. The place where sacrifice becomes truth. For a fleeting moment you think of the surface above. The pale light of Terra's sun filtered through polluted skies. The sound of markets and manufactura, the laughter of children you will never hear again. The images are sharp, painfully so, because you know they are the last you will ever have. They are not memories anymore. They are farewells. You whisper them to yourself silently, sealing them into your mind as though that act alone could preserve them against the obliteration that waits below. The corridor bends, and you see the faint glow of lumen strips ahead, brighter than before, shimmering like the edge of dawn. The chains pull tight as the line surges forward, and you feel your heart hammer in your chest, faster, louder, until it drowns out everything else. You are not ready. You will never be ready. But readiness is not required. Only obedience. Only surrender. The glow sharpens, and beyond it you glimpse the edge of a vast chamber. The chamber of silence, though you do not yet know its name. The gate opens and the breath of that place washes over you, heat and cold entwined, the scent of incense and ozone, the promise of an end. You take one last step and the world ahead yawns open, swallowing you whole. The first step into the deeper corridors feels like a fall. The chamber behind seals with a groan of metal and stone, and the sound reverberates down the passage like the closing of a tomb. You realize then that you are beneath the surface of Terra in truth, not merely in metaphor. The walls are not built but grown from ancient stonework fused with machinery, veins of conduit and pipe running like arteries through the rock. The very mountain hums with power, an endless vibration that thrums in your bones. Every breath tastes of iron and dust, and though the air is hot, it feels thin, as if the palace itself is drinking from your lungs. The procession narrows into single file, each soul bound forward by the weight of their chains and the silent pressure of the custodians. Their golden silhouettes loom at intervals, stationed like statues of judgment, their spears gleaming in the dim lumen glow. They never speak, yet their presence is more commanding than any words could ever be. To falter under their gaze is to admit weakness, and weakness has no place here. The descent is a crucible, a testing not of strength, but of surrender. You walk because you must. You breathe because you are allowed.
The further you go, the more alien the world becomes. The walls curve and twist, carved with symbols that no longer seem human. Some are etched in perfect geometries that pulse faintly with light, their meaning hidden but undeniable. Others are sigils scorched into the stone, marks of sanctity left by priests in rituals older than the Imperium itself. The air vibrates with their presence, as if the stone remembers every sacrifice ever made within these depths. You begin to feel watched, not only by the custodians, but by the walls themselves, by the echoes of the millions who came before. Their silence is heavier than chains, a suffocating reminder that your fate is not unique. You are one among legions, and legions have already vanished here. The descent steepens. Ramps spiral downward, so narrow that the chains of those before you brush against your chest as you walk. The flicker of lumen strips casts shadows across faces drawn tight with fear or emptied into resignation. You catch the eye of a man ahead, his lips cracked, his breath shallow. He stares at you for a heartbeat,
and in that stare you see yourself reflected, a soul hollowed by inevitability, clinging to the last shards of thought before they are stripped away. Neither of you speak. Words are meaningless here. What comfort could they bring when both of you know you are already lost? At intervals, the procession halts in chambers that serve as stations of purification. In one, attendants in mechanicus robes press data slates to your temples, recording brain patterns in silence. The instruments burn cold against your skin, and you feel the weight of knowledge transfer, not yours to keep, but theirs to measure. In another chamber, acolytes sprinkle blessed water across your chains, the droplets stinging like acid as they hiss against the metal. They mutter prayers under their breath, their voices monotone, their eyes unfocused, as though they are reciting liturgies they have long ceased to understand. Each step of the ritual is designed not for you, but for the throne itself, to sanctify the fuel that will soon be burned within it. You march deeper. The heat thickens, oppressive, wrapping around your body like a shroud. The sweat on your skin feels more like oil, slick and suffocating. The air grows heavy with the scent of promethium and incense, the blend so strong it leaves you dizzy. Yet you cannot falter. Those who stumble are caught by servitors, their bodies dragged forward without pause, their cries muffled beneath the hiss of hydraulics. The servitors' blank stares, their flesh fused with steel, are a warning of what becomes of those who resist. Even death is not freedom here. Every body has use, every soul a place in the Emperor's design. Somewhere in the depths, a sound rises, a low, resonant hum that seems to vibrate from the stone itself. It is not mechanical, not entirely. It is something older, something vast, like the echo of a voice that does not speak in words but in weight. You feel it pressing against your skull, rattling your teeth, crawling beneath your skin. The others hear it too. Faces twist, eyes widen, and though no one dares speak, you sense the same terror gripping them all. The sound is the palace itself, or perhaps the throne beyond, calling, hungering. You realize that your march is not only guided by custodians and priests, it is drawn, pulled forward by that hum, as if the throne itself demands you come to it. The corridor bends sharply, and for the first time you glimpse light beyond. It is faint, pale, shimmering like a reflection on water. Your heart lurches at the sight, because in these depths, any light feels unnatural, almost holy. Yet as you draw closer, the light reveals itself not as purity, but as power. Great conduits running through the walls, carrying streams of energy that glow with blinding force. The conduits pulse with each beat of the palace's heart, and the light casts your shadows across the floor in jagged patterns that dance with every step. It is beautiful, and it is terrifying. You know, instinctively, that this energy is part of the machinery that sustains the Golden Throne. You walk beside its veins, and you know you will soon be swallowed into its core.
The conduits sing as you pass, their glow threading through the corridor like captured lightning. The heat they shed is different from the furnace warmth above, cleaner in its cruelty, a sterile burn that prickles your skin and leaves the scent of ionized air hanging on your tongue. You can feel the energy thrumming through them, a current so vast that it seems less like power and more like a presence. A thought intrudes, unwelcome, unprovable, that somewhere far ahead, behind walls and sanctums and layers of forbidden doors, that current converges into a throne that should never fail. The notion lodges in your chest like a shard of glass. If it falters, everything you have ever known turns to void. If it endures, it will do so because you do not. At the next station, the corridor opens into a workshop that is also a chapel, a manufactorum bay converted to rite and purpose. Servo arms hang like iron angels from the ceiling, each bearing implements that gleam with sanctified oil. Tech priests move along rails with gliding inevitability, their robes whispering over the mesh floors while mecatodendrites click with precise hunger.
You are halted beneath a strip of lumen that hums as if reciting a litany, and a priest with a face of brass turns a lens toward you. He does not speak. The lens dilates, a rune blinks acceptance, and a stylus hammers a mark into a data slate. A servitor sloughs forward on piston legs, clamps your chain and drags your wrists to a bar where others wait like offerings on a conveyor of fate. The metal is warm from countless bodies. Your pulse jumps where the bar touches bone. They take your name again and return a sequence that is not yours. They scan your retinas and feed those records into a cogitator whose memory is measured in centuries, as if to ensure the moment of your erasure is perfectly preserved. An acolyte dabs your tongue with a bitter tincture that tastes of iron and ash. You swallow reflexively, and the world sharpens with a cruel clarity, as though the tincture strips away the last gauze of denial. Another acolyte knots a ribbon of parchment around your forearm, its script etched in glyphs of devotion and warning. You do not understand the words, but your skin seems to. It prickles where the ink touches, as if the letters burn a path through flesh toward bone. A woman to your left stiffens as a device descends, a ring of needles that settles upon her skull like a crown. She inhales once. The needles kiss scalp and sink with the cold efficiency of a machine that has forgotten the meaning of mercy. Her eyes roll, then steady. A tech priest reads the output flickering across a slate, nods, and the crown lifts away. She blinks tears into the mesh below and does not fall. No one explains what was taken or measured. No one needs to. Knowledge here flows only upward toward the systems that require it, not toward the souls that are being emptied of it. You are processed in turn, the crown lowered with an almost tender precision. The first needle touches and the world narrows to a point, a single star punctured through the firmament of your skull. Cold radiates inward like hoarfrost spreading over glass. For a heartbeat, memories surface unbidden. Heat haze above a loading dock on a long-ago shift. A scrap of song from a Vox set in a hive cantina. The rasp of your mother's voice calling you in from rain. You do not know why these rise and not the others. Only that when the crown lifts, they recede as if drawn back on a tide, farther than they were before, made dim by distance you cannot cross. Released to the march, you find the corridor tighter, almost intimate, the lumen lowered to a dusk that makes every face a moving mask. The metal underfoot changes from grated mesh to smooth plates, scuffed by generations. The air breathes around you, fed through vents that exhale warmth and whisper. In places the walls bulge outward into embedded shrines, a bronze skull affixed within a wheel of thorns, a cracked aquila whose wings are pinned with stamped seals, a niche filled with candles that have melted in cascades, their frozen drips like calcified tears. Pilgrims, before you have touched these things, the metal is polished by their fingertips into proofs of passing, and the impulse to reach out is almost unbearable. You do not. The chain on your wrists is a constant counsel against desire.
Ahead, the tunnel yawns into a shaft where walkways spiral the circumference in patient loops. Far below, vapor churns like a slow storm trapped in a well, lit from beneath by a pallid glow that pulses with machine heartbeat rhythm. The procession winds along the railing, and the drop at your side invites a vertigo of thought. How many layers lie beneath? How deep does obedience run? You press closer to the inner wall, breathing through the press of incense that seeps from grills cut in the stone. A scrap of chant rides the draft upward, thin as thread. You taste the ash of old prayers on your tongue and wonder whether prayer is anything more than the shape of fear made orderly. Midway down the spiral, a custodian steps into the light. He is immense, his auramite plate a captured sunrise in this artificial dusk. The plume on his helm moves slightly in the draft, and for a moment, the fortress myth around him seems almost human. Then he speaks, and the illusion dies. The voice that emerges is filtered through a helm's vox, resonant and absolute. Hold! The single word stills 100 shuffling feet. Proceed! The single word restarts 100 hearts. There is no sermon, no rebuke, no pretended solace, only the mechanism of command, articulated by a being whose existence is an argument for inevitability. At the base of the shaft, the path runs beneath archways that sweat with condensation. The drops patter on your shoulders like a slow rain, and each one seems to leave a cold stain that refuses to warm. The smell shifts, less incense now, more oil, and a faint sweetness like old parchment heated over a lamp. You pass alcoves where scribes scratch marks into slates with styluses that whisper like knives across bone. One looks up as you pass, and in his eyes you see nothing but the arithmetic of quotas. For an instant, it is almost a mercy to be a number. Arithmetic cannot hate you, it can only balance the sum. Beyond the alcoves, the corridor kinks and delivers you to a door that is not a door at all, but an iris, plates interlocking with a soft rasp that raises the hair on your arms. It opens upon a chamber whose floor is seamless and whose ceiling is a map of conduits and ribs, like the underside of some titanic beast. Heat rolls across you in a steady wave, but the lumen is low and shadows gather in the interstices as if reluctant to leave. Servitors stand in rows at attention, their chests rising and falling with the tempo programmed into them, their hands folded on halves of poles tipped with probes and sigils. They do not regard you. They do not regard anything. Their eyes are the color of dead glass. A priest of the Ministorum waits on a raised lip of stone, his crozius planted beside him, its head forged into a stylized aquila whose wings are licked by reflected furnace glow. He intones a passage you do not know, his voice emerging from a vox grill woven into his gorget, and the sound crawls along the floor like smoke. The words speak of unity, of the emperor as lighthouse and blade, of the astronomonic as a hymn of living light. A phrase snags in your mind, give and be carried, and though you do not grasp its full geometry, some shape of it presses against your sternum with insistence. The priest's eyes never settle on any one face. He addresses the sum of you, and the sum is all that matters. When the iris seals behind, the chamber's acoustics change, the hum of conduits turning intimate, like breath at your ear. A second opening stands ahead, sealed by bars that glow faintly with a cold radiance. Through them you glimpse motion and brightness, not brilliant, but steady, as a dawn that refuses either to break or fade. There is a sensation in the air, an alignment, as though everything in you is being nudged into a pattern too large for your comprehension. The realization strikes, quiet and precise. Each step you have taken has not merely brought you closer, but tuned you, like a string drawn into pitch beneath a careful hand. Someone stumbles, the chain catches them. You absorb the jolt and steady yourself before the custodian's gaze can swing your way. The stumble is minor, but its echo ripples through the line, a thin wave of panic that tastes metallic in your mouth. You swallow it down. You keep your breathing measured. You fix your eyes on the bars ahead, on the glow beyond, on the place where descent stops being a direction and becomes a state. You do not know its name. Others will name it for you. They will call it necessary. They will call it holy. You will call it silence, because that is what waits when the bars withdraw and the light admits you.
The bars begin to retract, with a sigh that could be relief and could be hunger. Somewhere far overhead, you imagine gates opening in sequence, like the segments of an iron flower uncurling to expose its secret heart. The line leans forward as if pulled by a tide. You lean with it, and the heat greets you like a touch upon the brow, and the hum threads your bones, and the ribbon on your arm tightens where the ink bites. You do not pray. You do not curse. You move, and movement is all that remains of choice. The bars withdraw with a hiss, and the glow ahead swells until it washes the corridor in pale radiance. You step forward because the chain tugs you, because the tide of bodies carries you, because there is no other path left. The chamber beyond is vast, its scale impossible to measure at first glance. The ceiling soars beyond sight, supported by pillars carved with frescoes of the emperor's triumphs, each scene gilded so that the figures seem to move when the light strikes them. The floor is polished stone inlaid with circuits that shimmer faintly, as though they pulse with the heartbeat of the golden throne itself. The air is warmer here.
not the furnace heat of engines, but a suffocating weight that presses against your chest until every breath feels stolen. Across the chamber, ranks of servitors stand in ordered files, their blank faces turned toward you, their mechanical limbs twitching in perfect rhythm. They do not speak, they do not move unless commanded, and yet the silence of their presence is worse than the chanting priests, worse than the hum of machinery. They are reminders that even resistance will not free you, that flesh can be chained to purpose long after the mind is gone. You walk past them, their eyeless gaze scraping against your skin, and you pray, not for salvation, but that you will not be remade into their likeness. The procession funnels toward a stairway that spirals downward once more. The walls here are carved with thousands upon thousands of names, etched into brass plates that stretch endlessly, vanishing into shadow. The plates are burnished by the touch of hands, by the reverence of those who pass, but the names themselves are unreadable in the dim light. They blur together, a sea of forgotten syllables. For an instant you wonder, are these the honored dead, remembered for their sacrifice? Or are they simply marks to remind the living of how many have been lost? The uncertainty gnaws at you, for it is clear that no one speaks these names aloud anymore. They are as much a part of the stone as the circuits, as much a part of the machinery as the conduits of light. The stair tightens as it winds downward, the steps narrow and uneven, worn by centuries of countless feet. The air grows colder again, and the faint glow from above fades, until the only light is the dull gleam of runes carved into the stone. Each rune flickers as you pass, as if recognizing your presence, acknowledging you not as a person, but as fuel. The sight unsettles you more than the darkness. It feels as though the palace itself knows you, measures you, and has already begun to consume you before the throne ever touches your flesh. You reach a landing where the stair opens into a platform suspended above a void. There are no walls here, only darkness stretching outward, filled with the low rumble of unseen engines. The platform trembles beneath your feet, chains and cables anchoring it to distant shapes you cannot see. Priests chant at the edges, their voices raised against the endless hum, their words weaving liturgies that echo into the abyss. The platform shakes as though it resents your presence, as though it knows you are an intruder. You grip your chains tighter, your knuckles white, as the line shuffles forward across a narrow bridge. The bridge feels impossibly thin, a single span of metal suspended over nothingness. Every step is accompanied by the creak of chains, the hiss of vents, the low roar of unseen fire. You look down once, only once, and regret it instantly. The void beneath seethes with pale light, a roiling ocean of energy that pulses like the heartbeat of a god. It is not natural, not mechanical, not anything your mind can define. It is the throne's breath, the residue of its hunger. You look away before it swallows you whole. On the far side of the bridge, the procession regroups in another corridor, narrower still, its walls slick with condensation. The air is hot and wet, clinging to your skin, filling your lungs until every breath feels heavy. The sound of the procession changes here, no longer the shuffle of feet on stone, but the slap of steps against metal, hollow and echoing. The corridor feels like a throat, swallowing you deeper with every step, and you realize with a sudden clarity that you are inside the body of the Imperium itself, walking toward the stomach where you will be devoured. At the end of the corridor, a door waits. It is massive, wrought of adamantine, its surface carved with the twin-headed aquila. The wings stretch outward, filling the height of the door, and the eyes of the eagle burn with faint lumen light. Priests stand before it, their robes embroidered with golden thread, their voices raised in a chant that is both prayer and command.
They raise their hands, and the door begins to open, the grinding of its hinges reverberating like thunder. The air that spills out is colder still, laced with the scent of incense so strong it burns your throat. Beyond the door, you glimpse only shadow, vast and waiting. The custodians signal with a gesture, and the procession moves forward once more. You are through the door before you can think, before you can breathe, before you can turn back. And with that step, you understand the descent is almost over. What waits ahead is not passage, but the end of passage. The chamber of silence is near, and with it, the moment of truth. The adamantine door seals shut behind you with a crash that echoes through the marrow of your bones, final and absolute. The corridor ahead is darker than any you have walked, the lumen strips reduced to faint glimmers like dying stars. The air is cold and damp, carrying the weight of centuries, and each breath fogs before your lips as though you walk in the company of ghosts. The silence here is different, deeper, more deliberate. It feels imposed, like a command written into the very stone. No one speaks, no one dares. To utter a word in this place would feel like defiling a sanctum. You walk forward, the chains rattling softly, every step amplified until it feels as though the palace itself listens. The corridor narrows, its walls pressing closer, slick with condensation that streaks down like tears. The only sound beyond your procession is the low hum of unseen engines, a vibration that seems to come from all directions at once, as though the air itself thrums with hidden power. You sense the gravity of your destination growing heavier with each step, pulling at you like an undertow. You are no longer simply descending through stone and machinery. You are being drawn towards something vast, something hungry. At last the corridor widens, and you enter a cavernous hall whose ceiling arches so high it vanishes into shadow. Here the architecture shifts. No longer functional conduits and worn stone, but something monumental, something sacred. Colossal statues line the walls, their forms draped in robes, their eyes hidden by helms of gold. They stand in rows like silent judges, each holding weapons across their chests, each gazing down upon you with eyes that glimmer faintly with embedded runes. Their presence is overwhelming, and for a moment you wonder if these statues are all, or if they are ancient guardians standing vigil in eternal stillness. The thought chills you, and you force your eyes to the ground, to the black stone beneath your feet that drinks the light like a void.
The line halts. The priests step forward, their voices rising in a chant that reverberates from statue to statue, magnified until the sound is almost unbearable. They speak of fire, of light, of the eternal debt humanity owes the Emperor. Their words weave together with the hum of the engines until you cannot tell where the chant ends and the machine song begins. It is disorienting, suffocating, and you feel your thoughts unravel, each one pulled apart by the weight of sound. Perhaps this is intentional. Perhaps you are not meant to arrive at the Chamber of Silence with your mind intact. Perhaps you are meant to be hollow when the throne claims you. When the chains cease, the silence that follows is more terrifying than the noise. You realize then that the priests are not only singing for you, but for the palace itself, for the throne that waits beyond. Their voices are offerings, just as your flesh will soon be. The silence that follows is their answer, an acknowledgement or perhaps a hunger. Either way, it is enough to set the procession in motion once more. Ahead, the hall narrows again, ending in a gate wrought of black metal, its surface etched with sigils that seem to shift as you stare at them. They are not human letters, not entirely, but symbols that feel alive, as though they are watching you, measuring you, weighing your worth. The priests approach the gate, raising censers that belch smoke in thick plumes. The scent is sharp, metallic, burning your lungs until you cough into the chains. They trace the sign of the Aquila in the air, their hands trembling slightly, and then they step aside. The custodians move forward, their spears glinting in the dim light, and with a motion both deliberate and eternal, they press their gauntleted hands against the gate.
The metal groans, the sigils flaring with cold light as the gate begins to part. A sound fills the hall, low and resonant, like the groan of a world cracking in half. The air rushes forward, a gust of cold so sharp it feels like knives across your skin. And then you see it. Beyond the gate lies not another corridor, but a void of shadow punctuated by pale fire. The Chamber of Silence. You know it instinctively, as though the knowledge was burned into you long before this day. The final place, the end of descent, the heart of sacrifice. The chains pull tight, and the line moves forward, step by step, toward the threshold. Your body trembles, your breath comes in ragged bursts, and your heart hammers so violently you fear it will burst before the throne can claim it. And yet you walk, because there is no choice, because there has never been a choice. The descent is over. The silence waits. The threshold swallows you. The moment you step beyond the gate, the air changes, colder, heavier, charged with a pressure that settles on your chest and refuses to lift. The light is dim, not the steady glow of lumen strips, nor the flicker of torches, but a pale radiance that seems to seep from the stone itself. It is not warm, not welcoming. It is the color of bone, of ash, of things long buried and never forgotten. The silence here is absolute. Even the sound of your chains feels muffled, devoured by walls that seem unwilling to carry echoes. This is why they call it the Chamber of Silence, not because it is empty of noise, but because it consumes noise the way the throne consumes souls. The chamber stretches vast before you, its walls vanishing into shadow, its ceiling so high it may as well be infinite. Colossal machinery looms in the distance, half shrouded by haze. Towers of iron and brass crowned with coils that thrum faintly with unseen power. Cables thicker than a man's body hang like roots from the unseen ceiling and descending into the machinery and vanishing into the stone beneath your feet. The floor is smooth, polished black, and when you look down, you see your reflection, pale and trembling, staring back at you. You do not recognize yourself. Already you feel less human. Already you feel like an echo.
The procession halts in the center of the chamber. Here, platforms rise like islands, connected by narrow bridges of iron grating. Priests move among them, their robes heavy with embroidery, their faces hidden behind masks of gold. Their voices rise in whispers, too soft to carry meaning, yet heavy enough to press into your thoughts. You realize they are not speaking to you at all. They are speaking to the throne. Their words are offerings, liturgies meant to prepare the ground upon which you will fall. Custodians stand at the edges of the chamber, silent as ever, their armor gleaming even in the dim radiance. They do not move, do not speak, but their presence is a wall. You know without doubt that if even one of you tried to run, tried to scream, tried to resist, they would end it instantly, cleanly, without pause. Yet you also know that none of you will. The chamber has already stripped you of such thoughts. Escape does not exist here. Only the Emperor's hunger. One by one, attendants step forward, unclasping the chains that bind your wrists together. At first, relief sparks in your chest until you realize the chains are not being removed, only reconfigured. The attendants clasp them again behind your back, binding your arms so tightly you cannot lift them. The weight of the metal digs into your skin, cutting circulation, but you barely feel it. Your heart is too loud, your breath too shallow. Every sense is overwhelmed by the enormity of the chamber and the certainty of what waits at its heart. The priests begin their chant again, louder now, rising in layers like waves crashing against one another. The words are harsh, rhythmic, filled with syllables that cut against your ears like blades. You feel them in your bones, vibrating through your chest until your ribs ache. The attendants herd you and the others into smaller groups, each one guided onto a separate platform. You are separated from the faces you had grown accustomed to, the fragile familiarity of strangers who shared your terror. Now you are among new faces, eyes wide, lips trembling, skin pale. You are alone again, and yet not alone enough. From somewhere deep within the chamber, a sound rises. It is not chant, not machine, not human. It is deeper, older, heavier. It is the sound of the throne itself, resonating through the stone, through the machinery, through the marrow of your bones. It is not a sound you hear, but a presence you feel, pressing against your mind, weighing on your thoughts. It is vast, infinite, incomprehensible. You cannot look at it, cannot imagine it, cannot begin to understand it, and yet you know it is there, waiting, hungering. The Astronomicon must burn, and you will be its kindling. Your group halts on the platform. A priest stands before you, his mask sculpted into the visage of a serene face, eyes closed, lips slightly parted as though whispering secrets. He raises a staff tipped with a glowing crystal, and its light cuts into your eyes like fire. He does not speak to you, not directly. He speaks to the chamber, to the throne, to the emperor. His words are a litany of offering, naming you not as a person, but as fuel, as a gift to keep the beacon burning. You feel your knees tremble, your body sway, as though his words themselves strip you of strength. You are not a name. You are not a life. You are a vessel. The attendants move again, pressing you down to your knees. The stone is cold beneath you, so cold it burns through the fabric of your robes. You feel the weight of the platform beneath you, the vibration of the chamber through your skin, and you realize that every surface here is alive with purpose. You are surrounded by sanctity, and it is suffocating. Somewhere deep inside, a scream claws at your throat, begging to be released, but the chamber holds it down, swallowing it before it can form. Silence is demanded here. Silence is all that remains. The priests circle you like shadows, their robes whispering across the stone. Each carries a censer that spills thick coils of smoke into the air, white and acrid, filling your lungs until every breath scalds. The smell is suffocating, a blend of incense and chemicals that blurs the edges of the world. Your vision swims, faces warping, the chamber bending as though it stretches infinitely in all directions. The smoke does not hide what is coming, it reveals it. Every wisp coils into patterns that mimic chains, mouths, flames. You try to blink it away, but the images remain, etched into your mind as if they were truths you had simply refused to acknowledge, until now.
Servitors lumber forward, their limbs replaced by mechanical extensions tipped with clamps and blades. Their blank eyes stare past you, unseeing, their mouths slack with drool. One clamps your shoulders with a grip that bites into bone, forcing you upright. Another adjusts the chains behind your back, pulling them tighter, securing you until your muscles ache with strain. You want to resist, to twist away, to fight, but resistance feels alien here. The chamber presses down on every thought of rebellion, smothers it before it can spark. You realize with cold clarity that you are not meant to resist, you are meant to submit, because submission is part of the fuel. Fear feeds the ritual as much as flesh. The priest before you lifts his staff higher, and the crystal at its head flares with a pale light that washes over your face. The radiance blinds you for a moment, and in that light you think you see shapes. Figures kneeling, mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide and burning with fire that is not their own. They flicker across your vision, phantoms of sacrifices past, countless multitudes who knelt as you kneel now. They are not gone, they are here, part of this place, absorbed into its silence. For a moment, you feel their presence brush against your mind, an echo of fear, of agony, of surrender. You do not know if it is memory or hallucination, but it terrifies you more than death itself. The chanting intensifies. Priests pound their staffs against the stone, the impact ringing like thunder. The rhythm is relentless, each strike echoing through your chest until your heart begins to beat in time with it. You are no longer certain which pulse is your own and which belongs to the chamber. The lines blur until you are nothing but rhythm, smoke, silence, and the weight of inevitability. The platform trembles with the sound, vibrating beneath your knees. You close your eyes against the light, but the images remain. They are burned into your mind, etched there by ritual and purpose. Then, without warning, the chanting stops. The silence that follows is so sudden, so complete, that it feels like a blow. Your ears ring with the absence of sound, and you realize you are trembling uncontrollably, your breath ragged, your body soaked in sweat. The servitors release you only to press you lower, forcing your forehead toward the stone. You resist for a heartbeat, the last reflex of pride, and then the weight of their grip breaks you. Your head touches the floor, cold against your skin, and in that contact you feel something vast, something beyond comprehension. The stone hums faintly, alive with the energy of the throne, with the remnants of the countless dead who gave themselves before you. It is not simply a floor. It is a grave, a reliquary, a vessel for every soul consumed here. For a moment you feel their presence brush against your mind, an echo of fear, of agony, of surrender. You do not know if it is memory or hallucination, but it terrifies you more than death itself. The glow above your skull intensifies until it feels like a weight, not of light, but of gravity, pressing downward through your scalp and into the marrow of your spine. Every breath is shallow now. Your heartbeat slows, then races, then slows again, each rhythm foreign to you, as though the throne is already reaching out, aligning you with some unseen current. The priest's words have shifted into something deeper, more resonant, no longer a chant, but a drone that hums in your chest cavity. It is not language anymore. It is invocation.
The servitor's hands adjust your posture with mechanical precision, their fingers digging into your flesh until your shoulders burn. Their touch is neither gentle nor cruel. It is as neutral as the machinery that moves them. You glance at their faces, blank, drooling, eyes like glass, and a shudder moves through you. This could be you think, if you survive. If you do not die but are remade into something that can never die. The thought is worse than death. It is annihilation without release. Another priest approaches, this one bearing a data slate etched with scrolling runes. He holds it above you, and its glow casts glyphs across your back in patterns that shift and rearrange like living script. You feel the ink on the parchment tied to your arm heat against your skin as the glyphs cross it, as if responding to some invisible signal. The sensation is sharp and intimate, as though the chamber is reading you, weighing you, preparing you. The staff's crystal flickers, dimming and flaring in rhythm with your heartbeat, and you realize you are being synchronized, body, mind, and spirit drawn into the pulse of the throne. The chanting resumes, but now it is not from the priests alone. It rises from hidden vox grills embedded in the walls, from unseen mouths that echo the litany in tones that are not quite human. The sound vibrates at a pitch that makes your teeth ache, then drops low enough to tremble in your stomach. You try to swallow, but your throat is dry. You taste incense and copper and something like cold fire. Your vision swims again, and when you blink you see not the chamber but the void beyond Terra, a scatter of stars stretched across an infinite black. A ship flickers there, its prow pointed into darkness, guided by a beam of light you cannot see but feel. The image is gone as soon as it arrives, leaving you breathless, unsure if you dreamed it or if the throne is already pressing visions into your mind. The servitor at your side lowers a probe tipped with steel against your temple. The metal is cold and smells faintly of oil. It does not pierce skin, it merely rests there, humming softly. You feel a pressure behind your eyes, a pushing outward as though something inside you is being drawn up, siphoned toward the probe. For an instant you think you hear voices, 1,000 whispers layered atop one another, some weeping, some singing, some wordless. They slide over your thoughts, a river of memory that is not your own. You gasp and try to pull away, but the servitor's grip is iron. The probe hums once more and retracts. The whispers fade, leaving you hollow as though a piece of you was taken and replaced with silence. The priest lowers his staff until the crystal hovers just above your forehead. You feel a static crackle leap between it and your skin, a cold spark that makes your muscles twitch. He speaks again, his voice a harsh whisper through the vox grill. This time you understand only one word: offering. The word lingers in the chamber like a verdict. Not sacrifice, not death, but offering. Something given freely, though you know there is nothing free about this. The word burns in you nonetheless, because it feels final. The platform trembles beneath you, and you sense movement far away. Gears shifting, valves opening, conduits channeling energy. The chamber is preparing itself. The throne is waiting. You bow your head lower, your forehead pressing harder into the cold stone, and you think of the world above for what you know is the last time. You try to remember the taste of food, the feel of sunlight, the sound of your own name. Each memory slips like water through your fingers, already fading. In their place comes only silence, vast and endless. The silence of the chamber, the silence of the throne. Somewhere in that silence a thought flickers. Perhaps, in the instant before you were consumed, the Emperor will see you. Not as a number, not as fuel, but as you. Perhaps he will know your name. Perhaps that will be enough. The thought is small, fragile, and yet it steadies you. You hold it in the darkness, the last ember of yourself, as the priests close in and the chamber begins to awaken. The crystal flares, and for a heartbeat it is as though the sun itself rests against your brow. Heat spreads across your skin, not burning but invasive, threading through nerves and bone alike. It is not warmth that fills you, but intrusion, a fire that is not fire but presence. You try to recoil, but there is no body left to command, no strength left to summon. Your flesh obeys the chamber now.
The priest's chant rises to a crescendo, their voices layering until they sound like a storm contained within stone. Their staffs strike in unison, the impact shuddering through the floor, through your knees, through your skull. Each strike aligns with the pulse of the crystal, each vibration pushing you deeper into silence. You feel your heart falter and catch again, tethered to the rhythm, forced into the cadence of ritual. Your breath stutters in its cage, pulled like a marionette string by a will not your own. Then the throne makes itself known. It is not sight, nor sound, nor touch, but all of these at once, magnified beyond comprehension. It is a weight that collapses inward, a light that sears without burning, a voice that does not speak but is understood. You are overwhelmed instantly, your thoughts dissolving into fragments. Images pour into you, shattered glimpses of stars burning, of void ships cutting across the immensity of space, of countless souls kneeling in prayer. You see Terra not as a city, nor as a planet, but as a wound in the galaxy, burning with light that holds back the dark. You feel the gravity of billions pressing against you, demanding that you carry them forward. You try to scream, but the chamber swallows the sound. What emerges instead is a tremor, a vibration carried into the stone beneath your forehead, swallowed and redirected into the endless machinery. You feel it leave you, not sound, not flesh, but essence, drawn upward through conduits of steel and veins of brass, carried into a beacon you cannot fathom. You are being burned, not in body, but in spirit. You are the candle. The Emperor is the flame. The servitors tighten their grips as your body convulses, but your awareness is already slipping. You are stretched thin, drawn out of yourself, scattered into 1,000 motes of light that rise into the dark. For an instant you are everywhere, within the chamber, within the throne, within the Astronomicon itself. You feel the beacon ignite, blazing across the void, a column of impossible brilliance that pierces the galaxy. Ships find their way because of you. Worlds endure because of you. Humanity survives because of you. And yet there is no triumph in it. Only dissolution. Only silence. The last of you unravels as the chant collapses into a single word, shouted by every priest, every vox grill, every hidden mouth in unison. Consumed! The sound crashes through the chamber, final and absolute. Your body slumps forward empty, lifeless, while something greater surges onward, carried into light you cannot follow. For those who kneel beside you, the ritual continues. You are gone, yet the chamber does not pause. It cannot pause. The throne demands more, always more. You were only one of thousands, and tomorrow there will be thousands more. The silence closes in again, heavier now, as if the chamber itself has swallowed your absence and grown stronger from it. The priests resume their whispers, the servitors drag your shell aside, and the line behind you shuffles forward. For them it is not over. For you, it is not anything at all. The chamber of silence has taken you, and the Astronomicon burns. Far above the chamber where your body slumped and your essence was consumed, the galaxy itself shifts. The Astronomicon burns brighter, unseen by the eyes of men, yet felt across the void as a spear of light piercing endless dark. Its brilliance is no natural star, no ordinary beacon. It is the Emperor's will made manifest, focused through the golden throne, carried by the sacrifice of 10,000 souls each day. It is both miracle and machinery, a fire kindled not by wood or oil, but by lives. And in its radiance, humanity survives another hour.
Those aboard the great vessels of the Imperium do not see the chamber of silence. They do not hear the chants or feel the cold stone pressed against their skin. They know only the beam that guides them, the invisible thread that cuts through the tides of the immaterium. On a bridge high above the void, a navigator opens the third eye in her brow, and the Astronomicon floods her vision. To her, it is not a single light, but a chorus of them, stretching into infinity, impossible to comprehend. It steadies her against the madness of the warp, anchors her mind in the storm, keeps her crew alive. She whispers thanks, though she does not know to whom. Perhaps to the Emperor. Perhaps to the countless lives extinguished to fuel his throne. Perhaps to both. Rumors cling to the Astronomicon, whispered by scribes and adepts in quiet halls where their words will not be recorded. Some claim the light is not a single voice, but many, the cries of those consumed stretched across eternity into a song too vast for mortal minds to hear. Others believe fragments of the sacrifice linger within it, their thoughts fused into the beacon itself, guiding ships with the remnants of their will. A few go further still, daring to suggest that the Emperor himself no longer burns alone upon the throne, but that his fire is fanned and fed by the souls of the faithful, countless and unending, becoming one with his radiance. Such thoughts are never spoken aloud in public. They are dangerous, heretical even, yet they endure, because silence cannot smother fear. For the crew of a vessel adrift in the warp, the Astronomicon is more than rumor. It is survival. Without it, the storm would claim them, twisting reality into nightmare, dragging their ship into madness and ruin. With it, they hold a thread of sanity, a path carved through chaos. They do not question what fuels it. They cannot afford to. They pray instead, their words rising into recycled air, their voices joining the endless tide of devotion that stretches from Terra to every world loyal to the Imperium. They kneel before flickering aquillas painted on bulkheads. They cross themselves in silence before meals. They whisper to their children of the Emperor's light. They do not speak of the cost. And yet, the cost clings like ash to the flame. Somewhere deep in the back of the mind, even the most faithful must wonder. When the light guides them home, is it only the Emperor they follow? Or is it the multitude, the uncounted dead, their voices woven into the radiance? Do the screams of the consumed echo faintly beneath the navigator's vision, too faint for her to admit, yet too sharp to ignore? Are the dead lost, or do they remain, forever burning, forever stretched across the stars as the silent choir of the Astronomicon? These questions linger, unspoken, because to speak them is to risk treachery. Yet they haunt the dreams of those who serve too near the throne, those who have walked the lower halls of the palace and smelled the incense that masks a deeper stench. They know, though they will never say it, that the beacon is not eternal by its own will. It is eternal because humanity makes it so, with their blood, their lives, their souls. And the galaxy they preserve is as much theirs as it is the Emperor's. On a void ship older than the memories of its crew, the Gellerfield thrums like a guardian hymn, thin as silk and strong as oath steel, keeping the warp's teeth from biting through the hull. The Astronomicon threads its way through that shimmering membrane, a line of guidance drawn across a map made of madness. The navigator in her tower leans into it, eyelid trembling as the third eye opens to receive what no ordinary mind can endure. The light has texture to her, grain like sand, a pressure like deep water, a resonance that settles behind the heart. She tastes copper in incense, as if Terra's breath had reached her across the void. Somewhere below, in decks that never see true dark, ratings murmur prayers into their sleeves, while tinkers coax compliance from stubborn machinery with charms and oil and whispered litanies. No one speaks of fear aloud. They wear it like another layer of uniform, stitched beneath the cloth where no eye can see. There are nights on shipboard calendars when the beacon flares and dims in a heartbeat, not gone, only shuddered, as if a hand briefly passed across a lantern's face. Officers call it a variance and mark a note in a log, the way you might remark upon weather without presuming to command it. But among the choir chooms and the astropaths who live half-turned toward silence, rumors bloom like mold in damp corners. They say the light breathes because souls do, that its pulse quickens when the python Terra rises, that somewhere beneath the palace, chains rattle faster and voices fail earlier to keep the column of radiance unbroken. None of it is recorded. All of it is believed by someone. Faith is like that. It thrives in the crevices between fear and necessity.
An astropath seated in the vault of soundproof brass listens with skin more than ear, palms against a graven aquila that hums with distant promise. He does not see as sighted men do. He receives the world as pressure and perfume and a prickling frost behind the teeth. When the Astronomicon steadies, his breath steadies with it. When it surges, his bones ache as if weather were passing through the marrow. In the surge there is always a flavor. Today a bitter sweetness like burnt fruit. Yesterday a sterile chill that reminded him of surgical steel. He does not know that such tastes ride the remnants of those newly offered into the throne's need. He would not say it if he did. He has given too much of himself to reach for truths that do not help a ship find port. Far forward, on a prow scabbed with patches from a dozen wars, a gunnery sergeant stands watch and pretends he does not flinch when the deck plates quiver to a bass note no instrument plays. He claims to hear the Emperor's heartbeat in the metal. A junior beside him, younger and too honest for his own safety, whispers that it sounds more like a chorus, thin and far and countless, stretched until every voice becomes one tone. The sergeant tells him to mind his vox and his sector arcs and save poetry for chaplains. Later, off shift, the junior dreams he is falling through a shaft of white fire, and when he wakes, the taste of ash is thick enough to chew. He swallows a prayer and does not speak of it, because to give a dream the shape of words is to invite an inquisitor to weigh it. On worlds that never see the palace, where dust storms polish bones and manufactura chew generations into servitors, the Astronomicon is spoken of with the familiarity of weather and the distance of myth. Its name becomes a comfort for mothers who have no candles, a word pressed into small foreheads the way a seal is pressed into wax. They teach their children to lift their eyes toward skies they cannot see and thank a light they cannot point to, as if gratitude itself could pay a portion of the debt. In cathedra whose roof beams creak like old ships, preachers thread doctrine with rumor lint and call the weave conviction. They do not lie when they say the light is the difference between voyage and tomb. They only refrain from holding the silence long enough to ask what the difference costs. In the quiet corners of scriptoriums, the learned do what the learned always do: assemble fragments into patterns, and then whisper about setting fire to the patterns before anyone else can read them. They note that the beacon's character shifts when new wars feast on psychers by the thousand, that it acquires a sharpened edge when black ships return heavy with their tithe. They cannot prove what they feel, no one outside the throne's circle can, but they sketch their suspicions in marginalia and then spend whole afternoons re-inking the passages with safer words. They remind themselves that speculation is not heresy if it ends in a hymn. There are nights on Terra itself when the wind carries incense through streets far from the palace, and citizens look up from their hunger and wonder whether the Astronomicon brightened or if the mind merely wished it so. In hab blocks stacked like tombs, lovers press their foreheads together and pretend the faint tremor underfoot is not a machine's hunger, but the reassurance of something living, vast, and vigilant. In vaults where custodians pass like moving statues, silence is so complete that low breathing sounds like thunder. Somewhere between these extremes of noise and hush, the Imperium keeps its balance the way a soldier keeps his feet in a troop bay pitched by re-entry, by trusting the straps and not looking down. If there is a truth inside the light beyond the one taught in sermons, it remains wrapped in veils of liturgy and need. Men and women aboard ships feel it without naming it, a pressure that becomes direction, a sping that becomes courage, a cold that becomes clarity. If fragments of the consumed linger, if their last brightest moments stretch thin as gold leaf across the Emperor's fire, then such knowledge lives where all dangerous things live, in the compartment of the heart that locks from the inside. And even there it is phrased as gratitude, because that is the only safe way to carry it. On the bridge of that old ship, the navigator closes her third eye and breathes the way a swimmer does after surfacing. The light narrows to a thread, and then to memory. Her lips shape a prayer that does not request and does not argue. It simply acknowledges. The course is set, the storm holds off, the beacon endures because it must, because 10,000 mornings ago and 10,000 mornings tomorrow, people who were not chosen became the shape of direction for those who still move. She signs the ward against the warp, touches the auspex rim, and gives the order to translate. Engines answer with a rising hymn. Metal shudders like a living thing. Somewhere unimaginably far behind, a chamber holds its breath and then exhales white fire again.
In the upper halls of Terra, where the sun itself filters through the haze only as a dim smear of gold, adepts whisper over data slates that track the pulse of the beacon. They never admit it publicly, never commit the thought to parchment, but they feel it, each fluctuation, each subtle ebb and surge, as though the light is alive in its own way.
Some swear the Astronomicon grows harsher after great wars, its brilliance sharpened like a blade honed too often. Others believe it softens when pilgrimages swell, as though the devotion of millions bending knee on shrine worlds adds a sweetness to the fire. None of them dared to confirm it. None dare even to ask. The Emperor's light is perfect, immutable, eternal. To suggest otherwise is to suggest that it is fed. Yet fed it is. And the galaxy knows it, even if it refuses to speak it. A captain on a battleship offers thanks to the Emperor at every dawn cycle, but in the pause between words he wonders if he is thanking the dead as well, those whose souls are smoldering cinders, stretched thin enough to guide his vessel through storm. A sister of battle kneels before a cathedral's altar and chants that the Emperor's fire alone lights the path, but when she closes her eyes, she sees faces she never knew, flickering in the radiance. An inquisitor, hardened against heresy, studies the Astronomicon's wavering glow on her augur screens and thinks, just for a moment, that she hears voices buried beneath the hum, pleading or praying. She cannot tell. She crosses herself, erases the thought, and marks it down as fatigue. But the memory remains. The warp itself seems to recognize the Astronomicon. Where the light reaches, its tides recoil, not banished, but repelled, like beasts circling a fire they dare not extinguish. Demons snarl at its touch, their forms fraying where the brilliance cuts through. Yet even they, it is said, can hear the undertone of the beacon, the chorus of human suffering woven into its blaze. Some whisper that demons mock it, calling it a choir of the damned, while others claim the warp grows hungrier each time the beacon flares, as though sacrifice feeds not only the Imperium, but its enemies too. None of this can be proven, yet the unease persists, because even hope has a cost, and light always casts shadow. On shrine worlds, preachers declare that to be chosen for sacrifice is to sit at the Emperor's right hand for eternity. They speak of joy beyond flesh, of communion in the divine flame. The crowds roar approval, clinging to the promise that even the lowliest soul may be exalted in death. But in quieter corners, in markets and manufactura, the faithful murmur darker thoughts. What if there is no joy in it? What if the dead do not rise, but linger, trapped forever in the machinery of light, screaming across the void where no ear can hear? What if the Astronomicon is not a hymn of triumph, but a wail stretched so long it becomes indistinguishable from glory? The questions are never asked aloud. To question is to sin. But silence does not erase fear. And still the light burns. It burns because it must. It burns because without it the Imperium would collapse in weeks, worlds lost to the warp, ships adrift, armies stranded, humanity scattered and devoured. It burns because every day thousands kneel in silence and are consumed. It burns because there is no alternative. You realize, then, that the Astronomicon is not merely a light. It is the sound of eternity grinding its teeth. It is the cost of survival made visible. It is every voice you ever knew, every face you never saw, every life extinguished before it could be lived, braided into a column of fire that keeps the dark at bay. It is beauty and horror in equal measure, and it will never stop. The beacon holds as it always has and as it must. Its radiance cuts through the immaterium like a scar drawn across infinity, steady and absolute, the one constant in a galaxy of war and ruin. Yet constancy is not comfort. Those who know of its fuel cannot look upon its endurance without tasting the bitterness beneath. To them, the Astronomicon is not miracle alone, but a reminder, a ledger written in souls, balanced each day by thousands of lives surrendered to fire. It shines not because of eternity, because the debt is always paid. Within the palace, this truth is never spoken. In the lower vaults, the chamber of silence swallows each scream before it can rise, transforming terror into the calm hush of liturgy.
Above, in the grand basilicas, choirs of the ecclesiarchy sing that the emperor's will alone sustains the beacon. Pilgrims believe them because belief is easier than truth. It binds their fear into faith and faith into obedience. The Imperium depends upon that obedience as surely as it depends upon the sacrifices beneath the throne.
And yet, rumors endure, carried like contraband in the margins of tomes, whispered in vox channels that should have been sealed. Some claim the Emperor no longer burns alone, that fragments of the consumed drift in the beacon, faint but present, guiding ships as surely as his will. Others whisper that the light is changing, becoming harsher, more desperate, a reflection of the Imperium's own decline. A few, reckless enough to border on heresy, suggest that the Emperor has grown silent, and that it is only the multitude, the dead, the consumed, the forgotten, who now blaze across the stars. These words are never written, never shouted. They linger only in silence, because silence cannot be punished. Beyond rumor, the truth remains unknowable. Perhaps the souls offered in the chamber are obliterated in an instant, consumed utterly in the conflagration of the throne. Perhaps they endure, scattered fragments stretched into the radiance, singing forever in tones no mortal ear can hear. Or perhaps the question itself is meaningless, because survival demands sacrifice, regardless of its outcome. The Imperium does not ask whether the dead endure. It asks only that they give themselves so the living may endure. And so the Astronomicon burns. Ships carve their paths across the warp, planets cling to fragile hope, armies march to distant wars guided by a light that never falters. It is the Imperium's greatest miracle and its darkest burden. For every soul lost in silence, billions live another day. For every scream swallowed by the chamber, the stars are held open a little longer against the dark. It is not triumph. It is not mercy. It is necessity. Above the golden throne, the beacon's radiance stretches outward, piercing the void, unseen yet felt, infinite and inescapable. Below it, in chambers few will ever know, the silence continues, and the offering never ends. And though the galaxy calls it light, those who have glimpsed its truth understand, it is not light alone, it is fire. The galaxy turns upon an axis of sacrifice. Every world lit by the Astronomicon, every void ship that survives the storms of the warp, every child born beneath the shadow of the Aquila, all of it rests upon the unseen foundation of lives surrendered in silence. It is a debt so vast that it cannot be measured, a price so constant that it cannot be paused. To live within the Imperium is to inherit it, whether one acknowledges it or not. Each day you breathe air recycled through the lungs of the faithful, you do so because others knelt beneath the throne and gave themselves to fire. Each step taken upon soil shielded from the warp is possible because thousands vanished into silence so you would not. This is the eternal debt, and it binds the galaxy as tightly as any chain of steel. For most, it is invisible. Farmers till their fields on agri-worlds, feeding billions who will never see their faces. Miners dig through rock and ice to extract the fuel that drives the engines of war. Hive workers labor until their bodies collapse, never once raising their eyes toward Terra, never questioning the light that guides their masters' fleets. To them, the Astronomicon is myth, the Emperor is legend, and sacrifice is a story told in sermons. They do not feel the weight of the cost, because they cannot. If they did, the galaxy might crack beneath its own truth. And so they live in ignorance. And their ignorance is as necessary as the silence beneath the palace. But for those who know, even in whispers, the debt is inescapable. A scribe in the librarius pauses as he records casualty numbers from a distant war front, and he wonders whether the men who died in trenches gave less, or perhaps more, than those who knelt in the chamber of silence. A captain of the Astra Militarum salutes the Aquila before sending his regiment into a battle they cannot win, and he understands in his marrow that the emperor demands both, their lives in combat and the lives beneath the throne. Both debts are eternal. Both are unavoidable. Even the Adeptus Custodes, those golden giants who stand watch over the palace, live with the weight of this truth. They do not speak of it, for their duty is silence. But when they stand vigil beside the great gates, when they feel the hum of the throne beneath their armored feet, they know that the emperor's survival is written not only in their vigilance, but in the steady extinguishing of nameless souls. They defend him with spear and shield, but they also defend the truth of his hunger. In their silence lies both reverence and acknowledgement.
The eternal debt is not balanced by glory. It is not balanced at all. It is a wound that can never heal, a ledger that can never be closed. To question it is heresy. To refuse it is treason. To accept it is simply to live. And so the galaxy carries it forward day after day, century after century, like a pilgrim dragging chains across dust and ruin. It is the weight of humanity's survival, and it presses upon every soul, whether they feel it or not. And still the light burns. It burns because the debt is always paid. It burns because the silence never ends. On a morning that never quite becomes day beneath Terra's haze, a procession of black ships eases itself into orbit with the patience of carrion birds. Their holds are full, their hymnals already humming with the muted chorus of bound psychers who will never see the palace's spires. Docking arms bite and seal, administratum clerks prepare their tallies, and the ledgers swell by columns of digits that represent skin and breath and fear. To an adept in a counting vault, it is throughput, a line that must not dip below the sanctioned mean. To the men and women chained in the holds, it is the end of a path that began the moment an unwanted spark awoke behind their eyes. The debt is not an abstraction to them. It is the feel of cooled iron against the throat and the dry ache of a gag in the mouth, while hymnvox murmur comfort to no one in particular. In the manufactora of a forge world, where heat scours and ash settles in hair like early snow, a cohort of Skitari advances through aisles of press stamps and cutter lathes. They are not there to collect tithes of flesh. Their task is upkeep and war readiness. Yet even they march to the cadence of a debt older than their augmetics. They guard the arteries that feed the Imperium's war heart, and they know, without needing to know, that all arteries converge on Terra's mountain, where machinery and liturgy are a single word. When they kneel in an off-shift chapel of oiled steel and copper saints, their prayers creak in voices that only barely remember meat, and the words are simple enough even a child could speak them. Let the light hold. On a shrine world whose deserts sway like oceans of glass, a mother carries a votive up the steps of a basilica scored by 1,000 pilgrim knees. She has 3 children, 2 living and 1 folded into a remembrance locket that warms against her sternum when she prays. She does not know what the Astronomicon is in terms of coils and coils, circuits and soul dynamics. She knows only that when a distant orbiting freighter failed to translate, the chapel bells rang until metal cracked and people wept in the streets. When the light returned, the bells rang again, and the weeping changed color. Her candle will gutter without ever reaching Terra. She sets it down anyway and tells her oldest to watch the flame until it dies, so he will learn something about devotion and loss. The boy nods solemnly and does not ask why the emperor, who is a son to all sons, must borrow from such small fires to feed his own. In a Schola Progenium, a child of no house and every regiment grips a training las gun until her hands blister. The drill abbot speaks of duty without adornment, of the emperor's burden borne by those who march and those who kneel. He does not speak of the chamber, but he speaks around it so precisely that the missing words feel present, like a silhouette traced by light. At night, she rolls a scavenged data slate beneath her bunk and reads campaign histories, martyr lists, honor rolls, and measures herself against names that ended at the muzzle or beneath a standard. She understands that heroism can be loud or very quiet. She hopes for the first and fears the second, and cannot decide which would be braver. There is a room within the palace where parchment does not rustle and boots never echo, where the Adeptus Custodes stand as if carved from the mountain itself. Visitors to that room do not leave with souvenirs, only with silence. In that silence, a custodian thinks, not in doubts, because doubt is an indulgence denied to him, but in shapes of consequence. He knows the number that must be met by night's end. He knows the number will be met by night's end. He knows the galaxy's throat will remain clear for ships to sing their way through madness, because 10,000 throats will not speak again. He does not ask for gentler arithmetic. He asks only for endurance, his own and everyone else's, because if endurance fails, then the sums fail, and if the sums fail, then the light becomes a memory, and if the light becomes a memory, then no oath means anything.
An inquisitor reads a report that is not a report, merely a weave of indicators and redacted blocks that imply strain along the beacon's spine. She circles nothing in ink. She requests no purge, no auto-da-fe. She closes her eyes and tastes metal, the afterscent that clings to the air whenever transports descend toward the lower vaults in heavier numbers. She writes a different order, one that reinforces escorts for the black ships, along lanes where raiders test the Imperium's nerve. It is a small thing, an adjustment of teeth in a very large gear. It may save a barge of psychers from pirate hooks and keep a planetary convoy aligned to its appointed dawn. She does not frame it as mercy. She frames it as maintenance. In a void ship chapel gray with incense ash, a chaplain lifts his voice and avoids poetry because the simplest truths wear best in hard weather. He says the light holds because we hold. He says the emperor asks what we can give and takes what we must give. He says the sum of it is not despair, but direction, and that a life spent facing the right way has not been wasted, even if it ends in a place without windows. A rating with grease in his nails and a scar along his scalp believes him enough to go on shift and tighten a coolant line that might have failed if his hands had shaken. The line holds. The engine sings slightly truer. The ship does not die today. The debt is paid in a measure of torque as surely as it is paid in a measure of souls. If there are nights when the Astronomicon sounds to certain listeners like a choir and to others like a saw, those nights pass into dawn cycles and log entries all the same. The machines keep their tone, the prayers keep their meter. The Imperium learns again and again to call necessity by finer names and to lace its horror with ritual so the taste is endurable. No one ever balances the book. They only keep writing, and the ink never dries. There are those who insist the debt is holy. To them, each soul surrendered in the chamber is not lost, but transfigured, not extinguished, but crowned. They carve statues of martyrs with faces serene, eyes lifted toward an unseen light, hands folded as if in embrace of their fate. They teach that to be chosen is a blessing beyond comprehension, the closest any mortal may come to communion with the Emperor himself. Pilgrims cling to these words because they must. Without them, the silence beneath Terra becomes too stark, too unendurable. Faith is the balm upon the wound, and the wound is eternal.
But faith, no matter how fierce, cannot mute the darker murmurs that slither through the Imperium's endless halls. Some say the Emperor's hunger grows, that the tithe swells with each century, not lessening but deepening, as though the throne itself is devouring more fervently with time. Others whisper that the souls consumed do not ascend, nor vanish, but are bound into the beacon, their thoughts stripped to purest function, their identities unmade until only raw direction remains. Such whispers are treasonous, yet they persist because the debt itself is undeniable. No citizen can look upon a starship streaking across the void and not sense that something vast and terrible sustains its path. In the Schola halls, where discipline is carved into bone, instructors drill children in obedience to debt. They do not call it that, but the lesson is plain. Your life is not your own. It belongs to the Emperor, and he may claim it in battle, in service, or in silence. Some cadets grow proud beneath this truth, eager to be consumed in glory. Others grow hollow, carrying obedience as a stone carried in the gut, heavy and unyielding. Yet all of them march, none refuse. Refusal is a word erased from the lexicon before they are old enough to speak it. Among the Astra Militarium, soldiers know the debt more intimately. They march into wars where survival is measured not in victories but in delays, where their deaths buy days or hours for others to escape. They do not ask if their lives will be remembered. They know the Imperium's memory is short, its need infinite. They shout the Emperor's name as they fall, and in their final breath, some wonder if their essence will join the unseen chorus that guides ships across the stars. It is a fleeting thought, snuffed as quickly as it arises, yet it clings because no soldier can endure without believing his death becomes part of something larger than himself.
And still, the chamber below swallows more than war ever could. 10,000 a day, every day, without pause or mercy. The ledger never closes, the tide never recedes. This is the eternal debt, not a debt owed once and repaid, but a debt written into the marrow of existence itself. The Imperium breathes only because it exhales those it no longer names. The galaxy spins only because countless lives are ground into the gears that hold it together. And if, for a fleeting moment, you allow yourself to wonder whether the Emperor truly demands it, or whether humanity has built a cage of its own fear around him, you quickly smother the thought, because the debt is not a question. It is not a choice. It is simply the air you breathe, and to question air is to choke. The ledger remains open. It always has, and it always will. From the first moment the Golden Throne claimed its tithe, to this very heartbeat, to the next millennium that will grind forward upon blood and silence, the Imperium lives because it refuses to die, and it refuses to die because it consumes. The Astronomicon blazes because fuel is always found. The Emperor endures because humanity gives him no other option. It is a cycle as vast as the galaxy itself, endless and merciless, yet accepted as the most natural truth of existence. There is no end to the debt, no final payment that will balance the scales. Those consumed are not mourned beyond a whisper, because mourning implies closure, and closure cannot be afforded. Instead, their absence is transfigured into light, their silence reframed as song, their annihilation praised as victory. The galaxy does not deny the horror, it simply baptizes it, clothing it in liturgy until horror itself becomes holy. In this way the Imperium survives, and in this way the Imperium ensures the debt continues forever. On Terra, pilgrims still climb the endless steps of Cathedra, their knees raw and bleeding, their lips whispering prayers they do not fully understand. On distant worlds, soldiers still march into ruin, farmers still plant seeds in soil salted by war, children still grow beneath banners they will someday carry into battle. All of them inherit the debt without knowing it. all of them pass it forward by living. And somewhere beneath the palace, where stone drink screams and silence crowns itself with fire, 10,000 more are offered into the throne. Their names vanish, their lives vanish, their voices vanish. Yet in the vanishing, the light does not falter, the Imperium does not fall, humanity does not vanish into the storm. That is the eternal debt. It is the reason you stand, the reason you breathe, the reason the galaxy is not already consumed by the dark. It is the weight beneath every prayer and every silence, and though the Imperium may one day crumble, though its banners may one day fall, the truth will not change. It was built upon sacrifice, it was sustained by sacrifice, and it will end with sacrifice. The light burns, the silence holds, and the debt remains forever.